The last few moons had flown in for Jon. He'd been kept busy with lessons, sparring, and with his work as a page for Jaime. Surprisingly, he found that most of this included attending Jaime in meetings, and while he occasionally filled glasses of wine or got refreshments for the guests, he usually spent the meeting standing by Jaime's shoulder while Jaime held court. Today, though, he was given a free day. Jaime would do this every so often. Just give him a day to explore the rock, speak to people, read, or whatever he wanted. Jaime said he needed to enjoy things as much as he needed his lessons. The lessons he took were completely different than the ones he had taken in Winterfell. Here he learned about running a castle, about trade. He learned about the houses of the kingdoms and their relationships to each other, and who their bannermen were. The lessons which confused him the most were when Jaime instructed him to learn High Valyrian and the harp. "Why do I need these, my lord? You need to be well-rounded, Jon. It can't all be facts and figures or warfare and fighting. A man needs to be cultured also." "But the harp, my lord." "What's wrong with the harp, Jon? A good bard would have all the ladies of the land swooning." "I'm a bastard, my lord. No lady will swoon for a bastard." "Jon, if only you knew. Let me let you in on a little secret. While some will care which side of the sheets you're born on, others will not. Your deeds, your accomplishments, that'll be what defines you, not whether you're noble or true-born." "Do you understand, Jon?" Jaime asked. "I think so, my lord." "Good. Then the harp. It'll be my young friend, and I expect good things from you." So Jon had taken his lessons, and found to his shock that the harp came as easy to him as swordplay. Now just a few moons into the lessons, and he could play most of the... He walked down the hall, hoping to find Tyrion. They had become fast friends, the older man's wit and intelligence sparking something in Jon. It was because of Tyrion that he found himself taking books from the Rock's library and reading at night, something he had never done in North. A mind needs books, like a sword needs a whetstone. If it's to keep its edge, that is why I read so much. Tyrion had said, and Jon couldn't help agree with him. He found that he enjoyed reading, and the discussions and debates he had with Tyrion about some of what he read had brought the two even closer. As he reached Tyrion's room, though he was disappointed to find it empty, he thought about going looking for him, but he heard a muffled sound of crying and headed in that direction instead. The room he entered was some sort of a nursery. There on the ground was a little blonde girl. She couldn't have been more than 2 name days old, and she was sitting on her own, sobbing. Jon moved over to the girl and sat down beside her. She looked at him. Her green eyes filled with tears, but her sobbing had stopped. "Hello, my name is Jon." "Jon," she said softly through her sniffles. "Yes, Jon. Are you hungry?" "No, play, Jon, play. You want me to play with you?" The girl nodded enthusiastically. Jon looked around the room, finally finding some stuffed lions and some dolls. He moved to go over to them, but the young girl grabbed his arm. "No, Jon, stay." He smiled at her and reached his hand out to her. She looked at him, confused, before taking his hand, and they both went over to where the stuffed toys were. "Grr," he said as he moved the lion towards her, the little girl laughing now. "Grr, I'm a lion." "No, Jon, no lion, Jon." She giggled at him as she backed away, so he picked up a doll and handed it to her, noticing the smile she gave get even bigger. "What's her name?" he asked. "Gerion." "No, that's my name. What's Dolly's name?" "Joy. You want to call the Dolly Joy," he said as the girl nodded vigorously. "Is that your name?" He pointed at her. "Joy!" She nodded before she pointed at him. "Jon." She laughed. The two played for almost an hour before the maid entered the room. He noticed Joy's expression change from happy to sad, almost immediately. "I'm sorry, my lord, I just stepped out for a moment," the maid said, clearly not expecting anyone to be here. "I've been here an hour. You're lying." I'm sorry, my lord. It's fine. I'll look after Joy until her father gets here. You'll no longer be required. Please, my lord, I needs this job, my family. This is all we. You can work somewhere else in the castle, but you'll no longer be left in charge of a babe you can't take care of." "Thank you, my lord. Thank you so much," the girl said before running from the room. Jon turned back to Joy to notice her smile was back on her face. He picked up the lion again and watched as she squealed as he moved towards her. The two of them played around before he heard a rumble come from her stomach. "You hungry?" "Jon." "Yep. Jon will take you for some food, little one." He stood up and offered her his hand as she took it, though he lifted her up and swung her around. The giggles he got for it stirred something in his heart. He carried the girl and made his way down to the kitchen, noticing the stares he got from some of the servants and guards on the way. He continuously spoke to her as they walked, and by the time they reached the kitchen, she was resting her head on his shoulder. "I came to get some food for young Joy here," he said to the small, dark-haired cook.
"Of course, my lord, right away."
I don't really know what she eats, though."
"That's fine, my lord. I usually prepare Joy's meals myself. I know what the young miss likes."
Jon sat down at the small table. He tried to put Joy in the seat beside him, but the little girl clung to him, so eventually he sat her on his lap and began to feed her the meal the cook had prepared. It was nothing fancy, just some soft fruits mashed together, but the girl seemed to really enjoy it, although she was messy, and Jon found himself covered in as much of the meal as she had eaten. "Ah, there you are. I heard someone had stolen my child and ran off with her. Never did I think it would be you, Master Snow." Jon worriedly turned to see Gerion's smiling face. "I'm sorry, my lord. It was just she was. Papa." "Hello, my little angel. Coming to Papa." "No, Papa, Jon." "Jon?" "Jon," Joy emphatically said before Gerion smiled at them both, before he began to speak to Jon. "Jon, I'm not mad at you. Confused? Not mad? Care to explain?" "Of course, my lord. I was walking past the nursery and I heard a sound, and when I entered, Joy was alone and upset, so I sat with her, we played, and then the maid came back. I dismissed her and played some more with Joy before she got hungry and we came down here." "Why did you dismiss the maid, Jon?" She wasn't looking after Joy. My lord, I was there for a long while, and Joy was on her own when she came back. Joy didn't seem to want to be in her company, so I stayed and sent her away. I'll have that girl's job. She was supposed to look after my daughter, not abandon her." "My lord, please don't do that," I promised. "The girl should be reassigned. She can work elsewhere. Don't let her go." "Very well, Jon, but I'm doing this for you, not her." "Thank you, my lord." After finishing the rest of the meal with Gerion constantly calling Jon the best nurse, "It seems like my angel's ready for her sleep." "Master Snow, you must have worn her out. Just how many games were the two of you playing today?" Gerion asked, loving the redness on Jon's face. "I don't know, my lord. A lot." "Well, thank you, Jon. She seems happier than I've seen her in a long time." The two entered the room, and Gerion helped Jon put Joy to bed, kissing the little girl on the head as he laid her down. "Jon, I want to thank you for today. You didn't need to do that, but you did, and I won't forget it." "I enjoyed myself, my lord. She's very precious." "Aye, that she is. My lord, if it's no bother, would it be okay if I visited her again?" "Jon, you don't have to." "No, my lord. I'd like to, if it's oak with you, that is." "Aye, lad, it's more than oak." "Thank you, my lord. Thank you, my lord." "No, lad, thank you. You have no idea what this means to me, but thank you. You have no idea what this means to me, but thank you all the same." Jon went to sleep tired that night. The little girl had worn him out, but he'd had so much fun. It made him think of his little sister back in Winterfell. Would he have been allowed to spend time with her, or would she, like Sansa, be taken away from him as soon as her mother or the scepter had noticed him? He resolved to spend as much time with Joy as he could. Like him, she was motherless and a bastard, although in her case her father seemed to only want what's best for her. Jaime sat at his desk listening to his uncle tell him about Jon spending his time with his niece. It reinforced everything he thought about the young man. After the first day Gerion had found him, Jon had made time to visit Joy daily. He played with her, read to her, took her for her meals. The little girl had even been taken around the castle by Jon, and the excitement on her face when anyone saw them together was something most people commented on. It had made Jon a lifelong friend of his uncle, more so because the boy did it not to curry favor, but because it made both his and the girl's days brighter. But they had important things to discuss, and as his uncle finished, they waited for Tyrion, Kevan, and Jon to arrive. Jaime had never seen the benefit of a page before, but having someone to send for people was something he found very useful, especially when that person was Jon. The boy was dutiful to a fault. Ask him to do something, and quicker than you could think he'd be off on whatever errand he'd sent him on. How the boy managed to fit as much into his days as he did was an enigma to Jaime. "My lord," Jon said, entering the room, Tyrion and Kevan beside him. "Uncle, brother, come sit. We have much to discuss. Jon wine, if you will." "Well, brother, what's so important?" Indeed, my lord, I was just getting ready to ride to Lannisport, Kevin quickly added. Jaime had made Kevin overseer of Lannisport. It wasn't the equivalent of being Castellan of Casterly Rock, if anything. His uncle had more duties and responsibility. He had originally planned to leave Kevin as he was and have Tyrion oversee Lannisport. But if Tyrion was to be lord one day, then he needed to run the rock. After Jon poured the wine, he retreated behind Jaime, standing in his usual place at his right shoulder. Kevin, especially, had disagreed with this. But Jaime had held firm. This was how it would be, and he'd accept no arguments otherwise. Gentlemen, I intend for a tourney to be held in Lannisport in 4 moons' time, the largest tournament that we've ever held. A tournament? What's the damn use of a tournament? Kevin asked, irritation clear in his voice. This particular one is important. It's in memory of my father, Jaime said, noticing Kevin's expression immediately change. Oh, of course. I'll begin preparations immediately. We should endeavor to make sure everyone important attends. The king, the queen, all the lord paramounts, and the members of the great houses. It's what my brother deserves. Of course, Uncle. We'll need to spend a lot of money on this, both in prizes and in making sure it's the spectacle it needs to be, Jaime said before looking to Tyrion. Well, it wouldn't be a Lannister tournament without lots of gold now, would it? Tyrion said, before Gerion interjected. You know you won't be able to compete, my lord. I know, Uncle, I'm the host, but that's fine. My page will be competing for me. What? Jon said in a shocked voice from behind him. Oh, it's not like that. Jon, I intend to have a squires and pages tournament as part of the festivities, under 12s in a series of one-on-one duels. My lord, the boy is only 7 name days, his uncle Kevin said. And he already beats most of our young recruits, Kevin, Gerion said, a smile on his face. He watched as Jon stood there, the look on his face changing from shock to something else. He saw the pride that his uncle's words had instilled in him, but that was quickly replaced by a look of determination. Very well, then. You all will meet to work together on this, Jaime said before dismissing the others. Jon, a word, please. Yes, my lord. This tournament is a big opportunity, Jon. You have 4 moons to train hard. I have faith in you, lad. But you'll be up against older boys, so there's no pressure on you. Just do your best, that's all I ask. I will, my lord. You can be certain of that. Lannisport, a few weeks later. As Tyrion looked out at the ground for the upcoming tournament, he felt a sense of pride. Jaime had practically given him full reign of the preparations, and he promised he wouldn't disappoint. He had brought Jon and a small escort with him to oversee the work. The tilt yard and the pavilions were both coming along really well, which only left the dueling arena to be completed. The idea behind it was a strange one to Tyrion. Usually there were melees. But Jaime had insisted on a separate space for duels. His brother was particularly excited for the squire duel that Jon would compete in. Tyrion had to admit the boy had talent, but to compete against older squires and wannabe knights was a bit too much to expect from a 7-name-day-old boy, even if Jaime had restricted it to 12 name days or below. But his brother insisted, and Tyrion could sense how important it was to him. So he drew up plans, and the arena itself would allow for an uninterrupted views down to the dueling square in the center. Well, Jon, what do you think? I've never seen anything like it. Tyrion is unbelievable. How have you managed to get so much done so quickly? Lots of gold. Jon, lots of gold. Is there much left to be done? It's mostly making sure that it looks good. The major work is nearly done. We need to organize stalls and places for food and drink, but most of the heavy lifting is done. The two walked, and Tyrion noticed the waves he and Jon got from the workers and the people of Lannisport. It was odd to him. He'd always been received politely to his face, but this was different. Ever since Jaime had come back, he'd been allowed to help improve the port. His uncle Kevin was in charge. He and Jon had been regular visitors to the town over the last few weeks, and word had spread about the young lord and his brother's page. As they headed towards the small tavern where they liked to eat, his cousin came rushing up to him. Lancel was an annoying little shit who Kevin had only named as his squire because Jaime had done so with Jon. Unlike Jon, thought Lancel had made no effort to learn and thought his position allowed him liberties, which it did not. Ah, Lancel, what brings you here? My father wishes to speak to you. The boy sneered at him. Well, it'll have to wait. My companions and I were just about to eat. Isn't that right, Jon? Perhaps we can meet with Lord Kevin first, my lord? At least the bastard knows his place, Lancel mockingly said. Careful, Lancel. Remember what my brother did to the last squire who spoke out of turn. Tyrion watched as the boys shuddered. An unlucky squire had been heard calling Jon and Joy bastards when they were walking around the castle. When Jaime heard, he personally took the boy outside for a spar. It was brutal, and since then no one had the nerve to speak that way where it could be overheard. "Whatever, imp," the sneering boy said before leaving. "What an idiot," Jon said as they walked into the tavern. After finishing their meal and after Jon paid for the meal of a couple of very grateful workers, they left and headed to Kevin's offices in the trade district of Lannisport. Tyrion was looking forward to getting back to the Rock, so hoped whatever his uncle wanted him for wasn't too time-consuming. The building that housed the Lannister offices was, as expected, large and imposing. His uncle's office itself was on the ground floor, which Tyrion was grateful for. They entered the building and made their way to the office. The guard knocked, and his uncle bid them enter, as usual. His uncle frowned, seeing Jon with him, but Jaime wouldn't accept him being sent away from meetings if he was around, and Tyrion felt likewise. He sat down, and Jon nodded to his uncle before moving to the wine and pouring Tyrion a glass. He then moved and stood over Tyrion's right shoulder, exactly as he always did with Jaime. "So, uncle, to what do I owe the pleasure?" "It's this damned tournament, Tyrion. Do you have any idea how much this is costing?" "I know exactly, uncle. Without prize money, we've spent 93,000 gold dragons. Jaime intends to spend another 150, sound in prizes and refreshments, so by the time we're finished, this will cost near enough 300,000. "Exactly. Tyrion almost 300 gold dragons for a damned tournament." "It's not a simple tournament, though, is it, uncle? It's father's memorial. My brother would never have approved these building works Jaime insists on." "No. Perhaps not, but Jaime is lord now, and his word is law." "No! You read it, Jon." The boy looked at him, and Tyrion nodded. "Armor sales, 25,000. Horse rentals and stabling, 30,000. Port taxes, 55W0. License fees, 75W0. Nighttime entertainment, 50,000. Gambling and sundries, 50,000. Miscellaneous, 75,000, giving a grand total of 360,000 gold dragons. Miscellaneous, licenses, gambling, and nighttime activities, which are what exactly, by the way?" "I think young Jon her means brothels, uncle," Tyrion said, trying to keep from laughing both at the embarrassment of Jon's face and the annoyance on his uncle's. "How do we make money from brothels?" his uncle asked. "We charge them a business fee, the same as we do any other business in Lannisport. They're eager to pay it, since we'll ensure, like any other business they're offered, the same protections. You'll turn Lannisport into a refuge for whoremongers." "Uncle, that's exactly what a tournament is. Now, if that's all myself and my companions are keen to return to the Rock." "Yes, very well. I'll have Lancel show you out." "No, it's fine, uncle. We know the way. Come on." "Jon, let's go. I'm sure my cousin awaits the return of her favorite storyteller." Cersei sat in her wheelhouse, Joffrey sitting opposite. They had been traveling along the Gold Road for weeks, and she was tired of sleeping in the wheelhouse. But when asked to share the king's tents, she had said they weren't good enough for a queen, let alone a lioness like her. Thankfully, though they were nearing their first castle, and riders had been sent to inform them of their king's arrival. House Liddon was a proud and noble house, and one of her family's most leal bannermen, though the castle itself was more functional than luxurious Cersei would relish spending a night indoors. "My queen, we shall need to leave the wheelhouse to enter Deepden," Sir Barristan said as he knocked on the door. "Surely not. Sir Barristan, how are we to get there?" "We need to ride off the Gold Road, my queen. The king's given orders to have your horse prepared." Cersei was apoplectic. This was a joke. What kind of savages didn't build their roads up to allow a wheelhouse to use it? Now she was expected to arrive by horse. Where was her litter? Was it not brought with them? Robert would hear of this, the indignity of it. She almost refused to leave the wheelhouse, but, in the end, necessity trumped pique, and she and Joffrey accompanied Sir Barristan to where the horsear were waiting. Her oaf of a husband sat on his destrier. Only a fool like him would ride a damn warhorse outside a battle. Her own grey mare was saddled, and Sir Barristan awaited permission to help her mount. "My queen." She nodded at the man, and he helped her up. She sat there side-saddle, a scowl on her face, and looked to see her husband smile. She wished to rip the damn thing off his face, but instead she just glowered at him, and they began to ride towards the castle. After a few minutes, which to Cersei felt like hours, they arrived. She allowed Sir Barristan to help her dismount, and together with Robert, the king's guards and their accompaniment, they walked to where the castle's residents were already down on one knee. Deep Den is yours, your grace, Lord Lyman said to the king. Rise, my lord. It's been a long journey, and we're in need of sustenance. Of course, your grace, we have your rooms prepared, and there will be a feast tonight in your and her grace's honor. Good. It's a fine castle you have here. My lord, wouldn't be easy to take in a siege. No, your grace, Deep Den would not fall, I guarantee that. Good, good man, the king said before walking away. Your grace, it's a pleasure to see you again, Lord Lyman said as he bowed before her. Indeed, Lord Lyman, it's good to see a leal Westerlands man. I was always loyal to your father, and now I swore my oath to your brother, your grace. My family and myself remember those loyal to us, my lord, and we reward them. She watched as the older man's eyes lit up. Her father had taught her that men were easy to get on your side. Fear or reward usually did the trick, but as a woman she learned that there was another way to get what she wished from men. She nodded to the man and presented Joffrey as the crown prince he was before. Along with Sir Barristan and the ladies Lord Lyman motioned to, she headed to her rooms. The feast that night was extravagant and, as usual, lost on her oath of a husband. The food was plentiful, rich and sumptuous, and after eating food prepared on the road, a welcome respite, the wine she was served was of the very best quality. Her husband was carrying on in his usual manner, groping serving girls and swallowing drinks like they were water. The captain of Lord Lyman's guards had caught Cersei's attention, though, and she had flirted with the man most of the night. His muscular body and tight, dark hair stirred something in her, and she could feel the heat pooling at her core, but she tried her best to douse the flames. She was close. Within the week she would be home, and he would be there. She squeezed her thighs together and remembered what it had been like, how they fit together, how they would once more. Soon, Jaime, she thought as she drank her wine. Gregor. Olenna sat in comfortable silence at the high table. Her son was being his usual oafish self, and she could see the Strombo roll his eyes while his father, Lord Roland, simply nodded along to her son's buffoonery. Down at the lower tables, her grandchildren sat with the younger members of the castle's residents. Garland and Loras were entertaining the boys with tales of swords and the upcoming tournament. No doubt, but as usual, it was her granddaughter who was the center of attention. Margaery had practically the whole table captivated. The boys, while listening to her grandsons, kept looking at her, and the girls had already started copying her mannerisms. No doubt by the time they returned to the castle, they'd be copying her hair, and how she dressed. Olenna thought and grinned. Allery was doing a good job of keeping Lady Craighall engaged, and a part of Olenna felt bad that Willis had remained at Highgarden, but his injured leg didn't allow for comfortable traveling. Comfort had been sorely lacking on this journey. They had traveled the ocean road and stayed in tents. Luckily, the weather kept fine, but at her age, staying in tents was not something she'd recommend. Thankfully, they had decided to stay at Oakhart for a couple of days before moving on. "Grandmamma, are you well?" Her granddaughter's voice pulled her from her contemplations. "Of course, my dear. Just a little tired. I shall probably head to bed soon." "If you're sure, Grandmamma, I could come with you. We could read if you'd like." "No, my dear. Enjoy the feast. It'll be another moon until the next one. Just don't wear yourself out." She smiled at Margaery as her granddaughter turned and headed back to the table. Olenna nodded to her guards, left and right, and bid good night to her host and her son and good daughter, citing age. She made her way to her quarters, glad of the chance to think in silence. The tourney was an interesting opportunity. She'd get the chance to get the measure of the strength of the new Lord of the Westerlands, and also a chance to begin her groundwork with the king. Her Margaery would be queen. That was for certain, and it would start with this tournament. They left the next day. Traveling again was annoying, but the weather had held, and they would make good time. There was only one more major castle between them and Lannisport, but they would not be stopping there. There was no way on earth Olenna would have her family stay in the halls of Gregor Clegane's keep. Even traveling close to the castle gave her jitters, which is why she insisted on such a large escort. After a couple of weeks of traveling, the town of Lannisport was spotted in the distance. Olenna sighed and prepared herself. The Game of Thrones was about to begin. Jon sat at the edge of the bed, the little girl looking up at him expectantly as he began the story. In a faraway land, there lived a little princess whose name was Joy. "Joy!" the little girl exclaimed happily. "Yes, Joy. Her name was the same as yours." The little princess had a friend, a wolf which she called Jon. He smiled at her as they played the same game they always did. He had found when reading stories to Joy that while she liked them, she preferred the ones that she herself was in, so he had begun tailoring his stories. So the girl's name was always Joy. Once he did that, he found she always wanted the friend's name to be Jon. She could be quite insistent, so he gave in like he usually did where she was involved. Quickly spending time with the little girl had become as important to him as sparring or his lessons. He had missed it one day, as he had been late getting back from a trip to Lannisport with Tyrion, and the girl had sobbed, and it had taken him staying with her the whole of the next day to bring back her usual happy countenance. Joy and the wolf ran through the fields. "No, no," he asked, smiling. "No, ride woofy like horsey," she giggled. "Fine, fine." Joy sat on the wolf's back as he ran through the fields. "Yoy!" She laughed loudly. Jon continued on with the story. The interruptions grew lesser and lesser, and finally he noticed the girl's eyes begin to close, so he got up and kissed her on the forehead. "Night, night, Joy!" "Nai ni yon." He left the room and walked down to his own, down the corridor, passing Gerion as he did so. "She asleep?" "Yeah." She was tired out after today, still wanted her story, though. "You spoil her, Jon. She deserves to be spoiled." "Aye, lad, that she does. Good night, Gerion. You too, Jon." He entered his room. The tiredness hit him as soon as he sat down on the bed. Luckily, his duties would lessen over the next week with the tournament starting. Jaime wanted him to concentrate on that, so he wouldn't need to attend him as much, although would still be expected to do so formally. He looked to the training sword which leaned against the wall. Jaime had ordered it to specific requirements, and just looking at it confused Jon as much as it had when he'd handed it to him. The blade was more slender than normal. The hilt had been made to fit his hand. The measurements precise, and the comfort of holding it made it almost feel like an extension of his arm, swinging the blade. Jon noticed how much quicker it cut. Thorough the air. His swings were faster and his parries quicker when using it. His initial doubts had faded, and he looked forward to see how it would stack up when used in the duels. He took his clothes off and got into bed. Tomorrow was an important day, and he needed to be up early. Sure, he had met the king before, but tomorrow he'd be meeting the queen. Jaime stood alongside his uncles and his brother, Jon, as usual. To his right side, they waited as the procession entered. The king's guard out front, Sir Barristan leading the way, followed by the king and two more of his former brothers. The king looked uncomfortable on his horse, and it made Jaime smirk. This fool spent years telling people if he'd have faced Sir Arthur, he'd have beaten him just like Ned did, and yet could barely sit his horse steady. He grimaced when the wheelhouse came into view. She'd be inside, he thought, and knew that things would be uncomfortable for the duration of the tourney. Before he could let his thoughts dwell, he noticed Jon Arryn among the retinue, which surprised him, although the lord was a stickler for tradition and showing respect. Turning to those nearest to him, he dropped to one knee as the others did the same. "Casterly Rock is yours, your grace." "Rise, key, Lord Jaime." "Thank you, your grace." "Ah, Gerion. It's good to see you, my friend," the king jovially said, moving to his uncle. "You too, your grace," his uncle said with a bow. "It should be an epic tourney, don't you think, your grace?" "Aye, I do, Gerion. Lord Kevin." "Your grace." "And you must be Tyrion," the king said, moving down to his brother. "I am, your grace." "Good, good." Jaime watched as the wheelhouse door opened, his sister exiting, holding onto the hand of her son. Joffrey was every image. His mother's boy, his blonde hair and green eyes reminded him of Tyrek, his nephew, the Lannister gene obviously strong. He swallowed as she made her way over to him. "My queen," he said with an over-exaggerated bow. "Lord Jaime," she replied, a devious smirk appearing on her face as her eyes practically devoured him. He noticed her look to his right and see Jon, the look quickly changing from predatory to something like disgust. He battled down his instincts and smiled at her, forcing her to look back at him, her eyes glimmering in delight. "My queen," his Uncle Kevin said, his bow as exaggerated as Jaime's was, but seemingly more sincere. "Uncle, it's good to see you again. You too, my queen." The toady voice of his uncle grated on him. "Your grace." Gerion's voice was dripping with false courtesy. He and Cersei had never got on. His humorous ways and lack of seriousness always grated with his twin. Uncle. Finally, she looked to Tyrion. The look she gave him made the one she'd given Jon earlier seem almost welcoming. Disgust, contempt, even downright hatred was on her face before she had a chance to say anything, though Jaime decided to say hello to his nephew. "Greetings, Your Grace." "Uncle," the small boy said without any sense of emotion whatsoever.
"How was your trip, Your Grace?"
"Terrible, Uncle. The West Lands are boring. They are an acquired taste, Your Grace." "Lord Jaime," Jon Arryn's voice called to him as he moved towards him. "Lord Jon, it's good to see you again." "Aye, my lord. Though perhaps it could have been under better circumstances. My condolences on your and your family's loss." "I thank you, my lord." "Perhaps we should move inside. I'm sure you and their graces have need of refreshing yourselves, and I'll have you shown to your rooms." "Of course, my lord. Are you Ned's boy?" Jon Arryn said, looking to his right. "I am my lord, Jon Snow." Jon bowed while greeting the old lord. "Well met, Jon Snow. I was your father's foster father for many years." "Aye," father spoke fondly of you. "Lord Jon, it seems I was named for you as well. Ned honors me. I look forward to seeing more of you, young Jon." Jaime turned to the rest of the group and gave them a nod to signal they should go inside. He and Jon walked to where the king and queen were standing and began their journey inside the castle. The queen's look alternating between glowering at Jon and trying to mentally undress Jaime. "Ah, Ned's lad, how you finding the rock snow?" the king asked after noticing Jon. "It's wonderful, Your Grace. It's not Winterfell, though. You must be missing the north and your father?" "Aye, Your Grace, but Lord Jaime and his family have been very kind." "Good. Looking forward to the tourney, are you? Seeing all those knights fighting raises the blood, and who knows, in a few years it'll be you yourself taking part, eh, lad?" "Aye, Your Grace. I'm looking forward to competing." "Competing?" The king looked at both Jon and Jaime confusedly. "Competing?" The king looked at both Jon and Jaime confusedly. "Surely the lad's too young to compete, Kingslayer." "No, Your Grace. We're doing something different this year. A squire's dueling tournament for those under 12. Jaime said, not correcting the king's use of the moniker he hated. "Why would you do that, Lord Jaime?" the king asked, genuine interest on his features now. "These boys we train, Your Grace. They're the future. They're the ones who'll fight long after we cannot, so let's see them compete. Let's give them something to show their talent, something to aspire to before they're old enough to compete in the lists themselves." The king nodded along, intrigued by the idea. And if it meant more fighting, then it was something he'd definitely be interested in. But the thoughts of young boys' weapons in hands disturbed him. Surely the danger was real. "It'll be tawny swords, of course, Your Grace, not live steel." "Ah, well, then I'm all for it. Good luck, lad. I'm sure you'll do your father proud." "I have no doubt he will, Your Grace," Jaime said, smirking at Jon. Cersei glowered through the whole exchange, Jaime noticed, and her looks to Jon intensified as they reached the lift. Though she seemed to relax and turned to smile at him, he shuddered. There was a time when a smile from his sister would cause his breeches to grow tight. It just repulsed him. The feast that night was a raucous affair. The king was in great spirits. The idea of seeing men fighting always stirred his blood, and Tyrion watched as the man groped and ogled, serving girls left and right. Tyrion sat at the high table along with his brother and uncles, far enough away from his sister to enjoy himself, despite the glares she sent his way. Jon sat beside him at Jaime and Gerion's insistence. The boy was basically family at this point, at least to certain members of the house. His uncle's family sat at a lower table, and there was almost a competition going on between him and Jon to see who was getting the most glares. Him from his sister, or Jon from his uncle Kevin, a few seats down, and from Lancel at the lower table. It amused Tyrion. No end, as it seemed to make no difference to the boy whatsoever, a stark difference from how he'd been when he arrived, and Tyrion felt a pang of pride that he had played a small part in that. "You enjoying yourself, Jon?" "Aye, Tyrion, though I notice you're not drinking as much as usual." "I can't. Jon, if I do, there'll be none left for the king." He motioned to where the king was swallowing a large tankard, and the two of them laughed together, getting him an even bigger frown from his sister in return. "He likes his drink all right." "Aye, that he does, Jon." He looked on as Jon got up and headed towards where the king and queen and his brother were sitting. He was about to say something to call him back when his Uncle Gerion sat down beside him, the ever-present smile on his face looking a bit different this time, and directed at Jon. "Where's he going?" Tyrion asked. "Ah, it's about that time, all right. What time, Uncle?" "Story time." Tyrion smiled as he watched Jon bid his farewells to the king and queen, and to his brother and Lord Arryn. His uncle was right. It was about time for Joy's story, and there was nothing, not even a feast with a king, that would keep Jon from that. He looked to his uncle as the boy left the room. Yep, Jon was family all right. Cersei sat at the feast on the opposite side of her brother Lord Arryn, to one side, and her uncle Kevan to the other. They were engaged in their usual drivel, and it was driving her mad. She should be sitting beside Jaime. She should be close enough to touch him, to feel him next to her, and instead, she was with these two dolts. Her husband was being his usual oafish self, which tonight was a good thing. It would make getting to Jaime easier if the fool was fucking serving wenches in his room. She looked over the room. These were her subjects, her people, and while they showed her deference, the way they looked at her brother annoyed her. She was who they should love. She was their queen. She hated them all. But as she looked down the table, she saw the figure she hated most of all, the demon who killed her mother, the shame of her family. "Valonqar," a voice in her head said, forcing her to shudder. As she was thinking this, the northern bastard her brother had seemingly adopted made his way to the front of the table. The impertinence of the boy, daring to address his betters. He should be whipped. She looked closer at the boy, something familiar about him. She knew he was Ned Stark's bastard, but it wasn't that it was something else. Your grace, my lords," the boy said. "Ah, young Snow, what is it, lad?" Her husband moved his head from between the bosom he'd been nuzzling. "I came to bid you a good night, your grace, and you to your grace." He bowed, looking from her husband to her. "And you too, my lords. Aye, good night to you, lad." Jon Arryn said, a smile on his face. "Good night, Jon," her brother said, his look foreign to her. "What a well-behaved lad, not like what they say about bastards, but then he is Ned's lad," Jon Arryn said as the king nodded. "Is he coming along well, Lord Jaime?" Jon asked her brother. "Aye, my lord. Jon will surprise everyone in a few years, mark my words." "Good, good, to see the lad doing well. Ned deserves it," the king said before continuing his debauchery. As the feast ended, Jaime made his way to his quarters. The king had been well into his cups, and he was glad he'd hired 2 whores to serve as his serving girls for the feast. His servants were servants, and servants only, and needed to be treated accordingly, and having a fat oaf grope them wasn't part of their job description. Luckily, Tyrion knew exactly the ladies for the job, and, as usual, his brother delivered. He entered his room and began to disrobe. All in all, today had gone well. He'd managed to steer clear of his sister, and kept the king and his retinue entertained. Jon had been well received with both the king and Lord Arryn. Seemingly happy with the lad, he had been surprised when Jon left so early, but the boy knew his manners, and said his farewell to the king, earning himself some plaudits from those assembled. Others had not been as polite. His nephew was a nightmare, 3 named days old, and already full of self-importance and disdain. Jaime placed his clothes on the dresser and walked naked into his sleeping area. A large bed and small table, all the furniture he liked in this room. Too many years in the White Sword Tower. Probably the reason behind his aversion to comforts. As he moved his covers, he heard a soft sound, a murmured breath. No, she wouldn't. He thought, his heart racing in his chest. "Jaime, what took you so wrong?" The covers fell to the floor, revealing her there, her blonde hair spread across the pillows, her posture deliberate and provocative as she met his gaze, a silent invitation in her eyes. "Come to bed, brother. It's been so long. I've missed you." Jaime looked around the room and found her clothes crumpled on the ground. He picked the dress up and threw it at her, the shock of it hitting her. Halting her movement, she looked up at him, hurt clear in her eyes, before suddenly the fury hit her. "You dare reject me. I'm your queen. You belong to me. Get out! Get out now, or so help me!" Jaime angrily said. "You'll what?" she asked defiantly. "I'll drag you down the halls to your husband's room. Tell him what you've done. How do you think he'll react?" "You wouldn't dare!" Jaime moved towards her. his hand shooting forward to grab her hair before she moved quickly back. She looked to him, her eyes full of fury and hate. But as she got dressed, she began to cry, the tears falling down her face. Jaime, Jaime, my love, we belong together. Can't you see? We were supposed to be together. We'll never be together, Cersei, never. He left the room and quickly got dressed before heading out down the corridor. He walked as fast as he dared, and very soon he was at the door to the feasting hall. As he entered, he heard voices. His uncle Gerion and brother were there, along with Jon, who had obviously been unable to sleep. Ah, Jaime, come join us. We were just telling Jon here about the time you and Tyrion got lost in the vaults. We didn't get lost, Gerion. Jaime and I were playing hide and seek. Tyrion, it's not hide and seek if no one's looking for you, Gerion said, causing all three of them to laugh. Jaime smiled and sat down. Jon immediately poured him a drink which he emptied, causing the boy to frown before he poured him another, this one. He sipped quietly as the stories continued. He knew he'd need to get some sleep soon. Tomorrow would be a busy day. The Tyrells and Tullys were arriving along with the rest of the Lords of the Vale, but he'd stay for a while. Perhaps by the time they all went to bed, he'd actually be able to sleep without the image of her in his bed. Dayne Lannister was drunk. No scratch that he was more than drunk. He stumbled down the hall trying to find his room when he bumped into a blonde, crying girl. No, this was no girl. This was a woman, a very beautiful woman. Are you okay? He doesn't want me. Why doesn't he want me? Am I not attractive? Who doesn't want you? Whoever he is, the man is a fool. You're beautiful, the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. A line, to be sure, but it was the best he could do in his drunken state. You think I'm beautiful? You are very beautiful, my lady. You want me, don't you? She said as she moved closer to him. Davin could feel his body responding. He was glad he wasn't that drunk, he thought, as he pulled the woman into a kiss and maneuvered her towards his room. He felt her hands on him through his clothes, and all he wanted was to be close to her as quickly as possible. I want you, Lannisport. Olenna was glad the journey was over. She was tired and in need of a good bath and some wine and refreshments served on a proper table and not in a tent. A part of her was miffed that they wouldn't be staying at Casterly Rock itself, but she was comforted by the fact that a large residence had been made available to them. As they traveled through the town, she noticed the arrangements that had been made. Lannisport had always been impressive, but here it seemed transformed. Pavilions as far as the eye could see. Merchants' tents overflowing with merchandise. The tilt-yard in the distance looked far bigger than the one in King's Landing, and the seating behind and around it was equally impressive. But one thing seemed out of place to her. A small, domed arena with one side open and three sides made up of seating was built to the left of the tilt-yard. What its use could be confounded her. She watched as a group of horsemen approached them. A number of them clearly guards, but the three at the front were obviously important. She noticed the tall, graceful figure of a blond man who could only be a Lannister beside him rode two small boys. One had dark hair while the other's was a dirty blonde as they got closer. Though the blonde's features became clearer, not a boy then, a dwarf, the imp of Casterly Rock. Greetings, Lord Mace. My lords and ladies, I welcome you to Lannisport. Well met, Lord Jaime. May we pass and do the introductions once we're all on our feet? Indeed, my lord. I've just come to escort you to your accommodations. How gracious of you, Lord Jaime. Think nothing of it? My lord, you are honored guests, and men of your importance deserve no less. She watched as her idiot son blew up like the pufferfish he most resembled. Apparently, Lord Jaime knew something of the game after all. Her gaze was drawn to the two others with him. The dwarf was nothing like she expected. Stories of his grotesqueness were legendary, yet to Olenna's wizened gaze, he simply looked like a slightly overgrown. They rode through the town before coming to a large house with a huge courtyard. The people began to dismount, and Olenna turned to her granddaughter and good daughter before they made their way from the wheelhouse. The house was impressive, large and imposing and worthy of her family, she thought, as she moved towards where her son and Lord Jaime were talking. At least he didn't try to slight them. Mother, may I present Lord Jaime? My lady, it's a pleasure to meet you. Is it now? She said, raising her eyebrow. Why, of course. What's better? Why settle for one queen when you can have two? She looked at him before smiling, noticing his gaze switching from her to her granddaughter. Maybe not such a fool. After all, she thought as he motioned to his two companions. My lady, may I introduce my brother, Lord Tyrion, and my page, Jon Snow. Well met, my lady, the dwarf said. Lady Olenna, the boy said as he nodded his head in a courteous bow. She looked carefully at the lad. He hadn't tried to kiss her hand, knowing his station may give offense, but he had courtesy, and it seemed genuine to her. My lord, young Snow. Garland and Loras accompanied their mother over while her granddaughter walked over to her. She watched as Lord Jaime and his brother made their introductions to the boys and her good daughter, while Jon Snow quickly engaged the two boys in talk about the tourney, grabbing their interest quite quickly with something he told them. And this must be Lady Margaery, the Rose of Highgarden herself, Lord Jaime said, taking her granddaughter's offered hand and placing a kiss upon it. Lord Jaime, a pleasure to meet you. I've heard so much about you. Not all of it's true, I'm afraid, only the good stuff, Jaime said, causing a small laugh from Margaery. May I introduce my page, Jon Snow? Well met, Lord Snow. Margaery offered him her hand, which he took and placed a kiss on. Just Jon, my lady. Well then, well met. Just Jon. Her granddaughter giggled, causing the young man to smile. Olenna watched the exchange with an eagle eye. The boy smiled at her granddaughter, and his features changed completely. He beamed, and it was hard not to smile with him. His whole face lit up, and she could see shades of the handsome man he'd become one day. She'd need to keep an eye on that one for sure. Tyrell women always had trouble resisting a handsome face. She herself was proof of that. The meal they had that night was the best one they'd had since setting out on the long journey to the tourney. Whoever had stocked the kitchens had done so incredibly well. Fine arbor gold, the finest foods from the Reach. Some of her favorite strawberry and lemon tarts were able to be made, and the pastry and freshness surprised her. Her grandmother was enjoying herself. Also, she could tell, she was sipping wine and eating the various cheeses that had been delivered only that day. Her father held court at the table, speaking to the other lords of the Reach that had already turned up. Thankfully, Lord Tarly hadn't so far. The grim lord really knew how to drive the atmosphere from any room. So are you going to enter with me or what? No, Loras, I'm not. It's for under 12 name days, and I've just celebrated my 13th. So they won't know. You expect me to lie? No, not lie, just don't tell them. No, that's not something a knight would do. She listened as her brothers argued about something or other. What? Were they talking about how could Loras enter anything? He was too young. She needed to know what they were on about. What are you two arguing over? We're not arguing, we're discussing, Loras said, his smug smile annoying her, not for the first time. Oh, discussing then. Loras wants me to join up with him and fight in the tourney. But you're too young. You can't fight in the tourney. Think about Willis. The worry clear in her voice. No, sis, it's not like that. There's a squire and pages tourney, a set of duels I'm entering, and I wanted Garland to enter too, but he's too old, so it'll just be me representing the family and winning glory. She rolled her eyes at him and looked to Garland. He looked eager to enter, but he would never lie about his age. He was far too gallant for such a thing, a squire's tourney, though she'd never heard of such a thing. Where did you hear of this? Jon told us. He's entering and says most of the squires and pages of age will too, especially when they hear of the prizes. You mean Jon Snow? He told you about this, Loras. Was that what you were all discussing so excitedly? Yeah, he's Jaime Lannister's page. Or is it squire, I'm not sure. But he gets trained by Jaime Lannister, the Lucky Sword. Anyway, he told us that there's a dueling tourney for squires and pages of less than 12 name days, and the tourney has prizes. I hope I face him. If Jaime's teaching him, he must be good. Prizes? Apparently the semi-finalists get 250 gold dragons each, the runner-up 500 and the winner 1,000. Garland said grumpily. She nodded and looked at her brother. She knew the gold didn't matter to him. The competition, though, he'd like nothing more than to face the others and test himself. Although he had said he had no plans to enter into tourneys unlike Loras, who was living for the chance to do so, this was different, though she could tell. For Garland, this would have been something he'd enjoy. She almost reached over to give him a hug, but he wouldn't accept it, and she didn't want to embarrass him, so she just nodded sympathetically and thought about the tourney itself. It'd be interesting to see boys of her, Loras and Garland's age, fight, and she found herself looking forward to it. She'd be there to cheer Loras on, as she thought about it. She remembered the smile the dark-haired boy had given her earlier. She wondered if he'd be any good. Loras seemed to think so. Well, then now she had two people to cheer. Jon Arryn walked from his rooms down to break his fast. He had slept better than he had in a long while. It seemed funny to him that Tywin Lannister's home made him breathe more easily than King's Landing. As he walked past a room, he heard laughter and giggling. The door was open, so he entered. "No, Jon! Horsey, go faster!" the little girl excitedly said. "Like this princess." The boy moved quicker, the little girl shrieking as she held onto his shoulders. "Yay! Go, Horsey, go!" Jon watched as his namesake played with the little girl, her laughter growing louder and louder. He smiled as he looked at the two of them, happy and oblivious to the problems of the world outside. The young man may have had his father's look, but the temperament was much different. Ned was stoic and withdrawn. His son seemed more outgoing and judging by the look on his face, freer with his emotions, although Jon did remember his much straighter face when speaking to the king. "Hello there, lad," he said as the young man looked in his directions. "Lord Jon, I'm sorry I didn't notice you there."
"No, not Jon, you, Jon,"
the little girl said, looking between the two of them. "Aye, Joy, he's Jon too, Lord Jon." "No, you, Jon." She grabbed the boy tightly. "I'm sorry, my lord. Joy's a little shy around new people." "No worries, lad. And who is this little sweetheart?" "This is Joy, my lord, Lord Gerion's daughter." "Joy," a little voice said, making the old lord laugh. "It was nice meeting you, Joy, and seeing you again, young Jon. Enjoy the rest of the day. You too, my lord." If only that was possible, he thought as he left the room and continued down to break his fast. Robert certainly wouldn't be up this early, and he hoped the Queen wouldn't be either. A simple, quiet breakfast is what he wanted. The work of the realm could wait. He entered the room and saw Gerion and Tyrion Lannister were the only two people he recognized, so he helped himself to some water and made his way over to them. "Good morning, Lord Jon," Tyrion said before his uncle greeted him likewise. "Lord Tyrion, Lord Gerion." He sat down and waited for the serving girl to come to him. Within seconds she had, and he asked for some bread and fruit and warm milk, his body not conducive to a large meal in the morning. "Did you sleep well, my lord?" Tyrion asked. "Indeed. Very well, thank you, Lord Tyrion." "Lord Gerion." "I met you, daughter, a wonderful girl, if you don't mind me saying. She and young Jon Snow seem friendly." "Aye, that they are, my lord. Joy's taken quite a shine to young Jon, and the boy indulges her, well, spoils her, really." "Good. He seems to be settling in well." "Aye, that he is, my lord. Best decision my nephew ever made was making that young man his page." It would be a good match, though, Jon and Joy, two bastards of great houses. Perhaps a keep somewhere could be arranged, and if the two got on well together, it'd be all for the best. Something to think of once they got older. He'd have to clear it with Ned, though, but that wouldn't be a problem. Jaime looked out at the assembled crowds. These last few weeks had been building up to this, and he was pleased at the turnout. Tyrion and his uncles had done well. All the great houses were represented apart from the north. He had expected that Stark wouldn't show, but he could sense the disappointment in Jon that he hadn't. He was tired of the greetings, though. The Tyrells had been fine, but the Tullys looked at him like they were better than him. The damn fishes that they were. The Lords of the Vale had always carried an air of superiority. But at least they had something to be superior about. All the fishes had done was force marriages, although given their daughters were between them, a bitter trout and a crazy one, that was probably an achievement overall. He looked to the king and queen beside him and shuddered. That crazy bitch would be surely have been the death of him had he stuck with her. As he looked out to the crowd, his family sitting to his left, and the great lords spread about the arena, Jon handed him the proclamation. "Your graces, my lords and ladies, good people of Lannisport, the Westerlands and beyond, I bid you all welcome to the tourney of Lannisport." The crowd cheered. "My father fell fighting for his people and his king. He will be missed, gone, but not forgotten."
T-Y-Win, T-Y-Win, T-Y-Win.
The crowd chanted, another of Tyrion's good works. "This tournament is in his honor and is in recognition of the great victory won by our King Robert the First of his name." "Hail, good King Robert!" The chants rang out. Tyrion really did know how to stoke a crowd, he thought, looking at his smirking brother. So without further ado, by your grace's permission, let the games begin. The cheers in the crowd were deafening, and as Jaime sat down, a large chant of Lord Jaime filled the air. He looked to his brother, who shook his head, and looked to Jon, who just smiled at him. Jon swung his sword against the training dummy. Around him, boys were practicing their moves and showing off their skills, but Jon was simply building his endurance, using the heavier sword against the dummy like Jaime told him. His father had always said the reason he didn't appear in tourneys was so an opponent wouldn't know what to expect. Jon took that advice to the heart, but since he would be fighting instead, he underplayed his skills and didn't show off like the other boys were doing. He looked around the field at his potential competition. There were some that stuck out immediately. The young Tyrell boy he'd met the day before. Loras seemed quite skilled, although Jon thought him a little extravagant in his moves. Lancel, while being an idiot, looked much better than he had expected. There was the two Royce boys, Robar and Waymar, both skilled, though the older one also had size on his side. Jon finished up and walked past the Stormland squires. None really stuck out, though there was no shortage of bravado coming from them. The Westerland squires were just as loud, though some of these did at least have the talent to back it up. The Riverlanders didn't interest him, sure they would provide competition. But Jon preferred to keep away from them. Suffering their liege's daughter was enough. Ah, Snow, care for a spa. I'm afraid I must decline, Lord Loras. I have somewhere I need to be. Perhaps we'll be drawn together then. Well then, I'll wish you good fortune now, shall I? Jon cheekily replied. Ah, that's the spirit. You too, Jon. Best of luck. Perhaps we'll stay apart until facing each other in the final. Loras laughed and turned to practice with his brother. Jon had to smile. Never bet against the confident man was something he heard people say, but being too confident was as much a problem as not being confident enough. He walked over and placed his sword back among the others and made his way to where his guards were waiting. It was strange for Jon to find himself accompanied by guards, but it was something Jaime insisted on when he was outside the castle. Jon didn't mind, though. His guards, Alirs and Jaws were hills, bastards just like him, and they built up an instant camaraderie. Finished for the day, Jon? The tall Aelys asked. His physique was impressive, but it was the shorter Jaws who Jon thought the more skilled of the two. He'd watched them spar, and while Aelys was no slouch, Jaws was much better. Aye, Alirs. You two eaten yet? No, Jon. It's fine, though we're not hungry. Jaws replied. Well, I am, and it's my treat. Come on. I'm sure an ale and some food would go down well. The two men smiled, and all three of them made their way to the small tavern Jon preferred. The food was always delicious, and the patrons had gotten used to Jon and had stopped making a fuss over Lord Jaime's squire. Jaime sat at his desk, waiting for Tyrion and Gerion to arrive. Jon Arryn had asked for a meeting, and he knew it was about funding the crown, something he no longer wished to do. His father had used their money to increase his influence at court, something to hold over the head of the stag, and the fat king had taken the money like a pig takes swill. His sister wasn't much better. The woman had never been refused anything by her father, and she took the same approach now, luxury items imported at great cost and damn the expense. Brother, Tyrion said as he entered Gerion following behind. Tyrion, uncle, sit down. There is much we must discuss. I intend to cut our contribution to the crown, he said, noticing the shock on both their faces. They already owe us nearly 1,000,000 gold dragons. Father was funding the crown at the rate of almost 250.000 a year, not to mention the nearly 100.00000000000. Caver, this needs to stop. I agree, brother, but it'll cause problems both with our sister and the crown. Damn our sister and damn the crown. I'm Lord of the Westerlands, not King's Landing. We need to spend our money on projects here. The gold won't last forever. We must do something now before it's too late. You do realize who'll fill the gap, brother. Let the Tyrells waste their coin on the fat kings. Whimsies, they won't do it for long. And when they realize that it's a Stark he wants as his son's bride, they'll cut their funding pretty fast. His uncle said, a large smile on his face. So, brother, what projects did you have in mind? Castamere. Jaime said, shocking them both. The minds were flooded, but Jon had found a solution thanks to Tyrion's encouragement to read. But how? Jon found it in one of those books you pointed him to. He called it a wind wheel. I'm not sure of the exact details, but Maester Craylan assured me it could work. He has the drawings in his rooms if you want to take a look. Tyrion sat there dumbfounded. If they could remove the water from Castamere, their minds would almost double overnight. This was huge. To think a 7-name-day-old boy had possibly found the solution that his father could not. He laughed so loudly the others must have thought he had gone crazy. "Are you okay, Tyrion?" his brother asked. "Well, yes, I'm fine. I was just thinking how father would have reacted to Jon. Speaking of Jon, I want you to attend a meeting with him later." "Oh, and who are we meeting?" "Sir Wireless Manderly, I want you to set up a trading agreement with the North. Well, with the Manderlys at least. Nothing huge, just a foot in the door. And you want me to bring Jon because he's his liege lord's son. He also knows more about the North than either of us, so he may see some opportunity we don't." "Of course, brother. I'll have it set for after the archery." "Good. We better make our way to Lannisport. Jon's already there. Are you bringing Joy, uncle?" "Aye. Jon wants to show her around the horse." David Lannister was not feeling well. His drunken encounter had created a whole set of problems. Problems that could end with him losing his head. The fact that he'd slept with his cousin was bad enough, but that she was the queen was downright treasonous. What made it worse was that it had happened another 2 times since. David never considered himself a weak man. Sure, he was cocky and arrogant like most youths, but he thought he was strong. But just thinking of his cousin's naked body and the noises she made as they fucked was enough to make him hard and undo his resolve to never do it again. "Are you okay, brother?" his sister, Serena, asked. "I'm fine, sis, just thinking about the tourney. You competing in the joust and melee or just one of them?" "No, I'd be in both. The prizes are way too good not to." His sister nodded along. 50,000 gold dragons to the winner of the joust, 25,000 to the runner-up, 25,000 to the winner of the melee, and 10,000 to the runner-up, along with 10,000 for the archery. And then there was that squires tournament that had everyone excited, young boys competing with a 1,000 gold dragon prize. It was unheard of. What do you think about the squires competition? I thought it odd at first, sis, but then I heard how Jaime explained it to the king. These boys are the future. I'd have killed for the opportunity back when I was squiring, so I get it, and I'm looking forward to see it. Any favourites? Sir Adam's squire and Sir Lyle's are both impressive young men. The young Tyrell is talented, and the elder Royce is a dark horse. What about Lord Jaime's page? Jon Snow? Yeah, surely if he's trained by Lord Jaime, he'd be among the favourites. He looked at his sister and shook his head. He'd watched the young man train, and he showed very little talent, just swung away with what little strength he had. It had surprised him as he, like his sister, had expected more. No, sis, he would be lucky to make it past the first round. Jon walked with joy towards the large stabling area, the little girl mumbling excitedly about horses all the way, forcing Jon to walk with a contented smile on his face. His 2 guards behind him just shook their heads as he swung her hand as they walked, making the girl giggle. Gerion and Tyrion had found him not long after he'd eaten, and he was delighted to see Joy with them. He'd promised her he'd take her to see the horses, and the hug she'd given him had brought a tear to his eye. "Horses, Jon?" She pointed at the stables. "Yes, Joy, come, let's go see them." "Yay, horses I come," she squealed. The 2 guards just followed on, trying not to laugh, as they reached the stables themselves. Jon had to hold her hand even tighter as the excitement got to her. He lifted her up, worried that if he didn't, she'd run off and get hurt. "Want to pet the horsey, Joy?" She nodded excitedly as he moved towards the small pony he'd picked out for her to pet. He held her tightly as her little hand brushed the horse's back and moved her closer to the horse's head. Nodding to Elias, he signaled to the bag he'd given the man earlier and watched as he took a small apple out of it and handed it to him. "Here, Joy, let's feed the horsey. Here, horsey, din-din time." She laughed as the horse took the offered apple from Jon's hand. "My turn, Jon. My feed, horsey." He looked to Elias as the man took another small apple from the bag and handed it to him. Carefully, he placed it in Joy's small hand and held her hand in his as he brought it to the horse's mouth as the horse took the apple. The girl gave an excited squeal, making Jon and the guards all laugh, before Jon heard a girlish giggle from behind him. He turned to see Margaery Tyrell looking on her face lit up in a beaming smile as she watched Jon and Joy feed the pony. "Lady Margaery, I'm sorry I didn't know you were here." "That's quite all right, Lord Snow. I was just passing." "No, not so, Jon," Joy exclaimed at the rows of high garden. "Oh, I'm sorry, little miss. Jon it is then," Margaery said with a delightful giggle. "Jon," the little girl said definitively. "And who is this precious little angel?" Margaery asked. "Lady Margaery, allow me the pleasure to introduce Lady Joy." Jon decided to play at formality, noticing that Margaery was grinning even more now. "Joy." "Ah, Jon, it seems you misspoke. It seems the lady's name is Joy." Margaery laughed at the exchange.
Aye, yoy it is, isn't it, little princess?
The little girl just nodded and hugged him tighter, and Margaery couldn't help but smile at the sight. The boy seemed so at ease with the little girl that it reminded her of how Garland and Willers used to be as she was growing up. Tyrion waited outside the large tavern where most of the Vale, Riverlanders, and the few Northmen had made their base for drinking and eating at the tourney. Jon was late, which was unlike him, and he considered sending one of his guards to find the boy before he saw him and his 2 guards come jogging towards him. "Been busy, Jon?" "Sorry, Tyrion, petting horses takes a lot of time, especially when an excited young girl doesn't want to leave," Jon said, his voice breathless from the hurrying he'd done to get her. "No worries. My cousin enjoyed herself then, did she?" Tyrion smiled at the 2 guards who nodded enthusiastically. "Very much so." They made their way inside and took note of who was sitting with whom. The Vale lords sat together while the Riverlanders sat just behind them. The few northern lords, though, sat apart from them all in a small, tight group at the back of the tavern. Tyrion could see Sir Wireless's large frame as the man ate with great abandon. He may not have ever met the man, but Jon's description of his walrus-like father singled him out immediately. Beside him sat a gruff northerner, his balding scalp, a sharp contrast to his large black beard. His tunic was green and displayed a large black bear, a Mormont. Then he thanked the gods for Jon's insight. Nodding to Jon and pointing over to the table, they headed towards the northern men, Tyrion walking behind Jon and letting the boy take the lead in the introductions, figuring the northerners' dislike of the south would be tempered by one of their own. "Sir Wireless, Sir Jorah," Jon said to the 2 men. "My lord?" Wireless questioned, looking carefully at Jon before recognition broke out on his face. "Jon Snow?" "Aye, sir it is. Sit down, lad, move. Make room for young Snow and his friends." The large knight beamed at him before nudging his companions. "May I introduce Lord Tyrion, Sir Wireless?" "Well met, my lord. Please take a seat. A friend of young Snow is more than welcome at my table." Tyrion sat down, noticing the grim look the Bear Knight gave him. The others looked him up and down before turning away and continuing their meal. At the end of the table, a small man watched him intently, his dark green hooded robe covering the sigil on his chest. Tyrion looked back down at him and noticed the sigil more clearly. 3 black water lilies on a field of purple. He nudged Jon to show him where he was looking. Jon just nodded at him and took his seat beside him before calling a serving girl over and buying a round of drinks for the table, which resulted in an immediate thawing of the looks from the rest of the northerners and a deeper frown from the Bear Knight. Tyrion noticed that Sir Wireless looked on with a proud expression on his face, obviously approving of Jon's actions. "So, young Jon, how are you finding it here in the south?" Sir Wireless asked. "Warm, sir. Very warm," Jon replied, getting a large laugh from the big man and most of the others. "Aye, 'tis that all right. Doubt these southerners would do too well on a crisp northern morning." More laughs from the table ensued as the northerns started to talk among themselves. Tyrion decided to continue to let Jon take the lead. Far better to sit and watch, for now, he thought. "Your father is well, Sir Wireless." "Aye, Jon he is. He'll be pleased you asked." "Your father's a good man, sir." "That he is Jon, as is your own. I had thought he may join us." "Father doesn't like to leave the north unless it's vital." "True that. Not a man for tourneys is Lord Eddard. Well, the north is well represented with both myself and Sir Jorah competing in the lists and young Jagan in the archery." Sir Wireless adeptly changed the subject, noticing Jon's face when his father's absence was brought up. "Sir Jorah, your family's well, I hope?" "Aye, that they are Snow," the man grumpily replied. "So, they treating you well up here, Jon?" Wireless interjected, looking suspiciously at Tyrion and the guards. "Very well, sir. I've been more than fairly treated," Jon said, his smile answering more clearly than his words. The conversation flowed as much as the ale, the atmosphere between the northerners and Tyrion and the guards quickly disappearing. Even the Bear Knight seemed to lighten up, although the small man Tyrion noticed earlier still seemed to be watching intently. Tyrion caught him from the corner of his eye, wondering why he was so suspicious of him before he noticed it wasn't him he was looking at. It was Jon. Jon, the man at the end of the table. Why does he look so intently? Tyrion whispered as Jon looked at the man and smiled, receiving one back. He's a Crannogman, one of Lord Reed's bannermen. A fen, I think, given the sigil. My father always said Lord Reed was his lealest man, so perhaps he's just being extra vigilant. Tyrion nodded, and after buying another round of drinks for the men, he and Jon got up to make their leave. He watched as Jon passed a note to Sir Wylis. The fat knight quickly took it and put it in his pocket. They bid the men farewell and left the tavern. The archery competition wasn't the most exciting thing Gerion had ever seen, something the king obviously agreed on given his drunken state. He looked to see Cersei staring daggers at Jaime and almost smiled. Some things don't change, he thought. Joy sat in his lap with Jon feeding her small pieces of mashed fruit, surprisingly without making a mess. He looked to see Jaime and Tyrion in conversation with Sir Adam and Lord Crakehall, all but Tyrion keeping their eye on the archery. He himself would have left by now. But he had gold on this, a lot of it, and hoped Jon's tip had been right. Put everything you can on Jig and Finn. Jon had told him so. He had almost 100 gold dragons, and he was almost beginning to doubt it, as the Lannister lad was very talented, as was the young man from the Stormlands. But Jon had told him that the Fells were the very best archers in all of Westeros, so he placed his bet. The first targets were simple enough. Pretty much everyone made it through, and the field only whittled out 2 from the 64 who started. The second one was only slightly harder. 20 paces wasn't that difficult. Even Gerion could hit the target from there, and he was a mediocre archer at best. It wasn't until they reached 60 paces that things picked up. We now move on to 60 paces, with 22 archers remaining, the herald announced to a few cheers. Joy, look at the arrows, he heard Jon say. Allows Jon. Yes, joy arrows. They go whoosh. Whoosh. His daughter exclaimed, forcing a laugh from him, and some of the people close to him. He noticed the young Tyrell girl sitting with her brothers. A few seats to their left was laughing and paying attention more to Joy than the competition. 6 archers eliminated. We move to 70 paces. The herald's voice rang out. He paid more attention now. 16 left to go, and the fen was still there. He watched as the man hit the target dead center, the young Lannister squire doing the same, the Storm's landlad, a swan, he thought also matched the shot, but very few more did. 10 archers eliminated. The final 6 will move on to 90 paces. Gerion got excited now, as did most of the crowd. He looked to see almost everyone was paying attention to the competition now. Joy was finished eating, and Jon had taken her onto his own lap, bouncing the girl softly up and down to her delight. Jaime and Adam were intently watching as even Tyrion's apathy was replaced with interest. Had he bet to? Of course he had. Gerion laughed. The first man missed, as did the second. The third was the young Lannister squire, a Rivers who hit the target. The next man was a short, stocky man from the Reach, a squire for the High Towers. He thought he missed also before young Swan took his aim and hit the target, followed by the fen who hit it perfectly. Ladies and gentlemen, we're down to the final 3. The distance is 100 paces. The herald's voice shouted over the crowd. First up, Dennis Rivers, representing the Riverlands, and Lord Lannister. The young man stepped up and hit the target, but in the outer edge to a groan, followed by applause. Now, Balon Swan, representing the Stormlands and House Swan. He took his shot and finished closer, that the Riverlands lad